Think it's a coincidence that the very people who are trying to conserve racism are also the very people who are trying to ban books about racism.
For anyone who may not be familiar with your work, what is it you write about?
I try to document the history of racism, particularly in the United States, and then also use really the lens of history to define racist and even what it means to be anti-racist, or ultimately to seek to create more equity and justice, for us all.
Why, as a writer, did you make the decision to write about these things? Why is it important to you that we have books that discuss these topics?
For me, what caused me to specifically want to study racism is because it's impacting us all, either directly or indirectly. And there's so many people who are suffering as a result of racism. And there's so many people who don't necessarily can't see racism because either they've never been taught what racism looks like, or they've been taught to see racism in 2025 and the way it looks in 1965. And I also think it's important to also convey to individuals how they themselves can be a part of the solution, can be a part of uh, confronting and ultimately hopefully abolishing racism.
Your newest publication, Malcom Lives, is written for younger readers specifically. Why, as an author, did you choose to cater this content to younger generations? Why do you think it's important that younger people read about these things?
I don't think it's a coincidence that the very people who are trying to conserve racism are also the very people who are trying to ban books about racism. And so for me, as I witness that relationship, it conveys to me that I can't just necessarily sort of fight against racism. I also have to ensure that our young people are growing up and being taught what racism looks like so they can not contribute to it, so that they can be a part of efforts to eliminate it, so they can literally grow up and desire an equitable and just society.
I think that's so important, and that goes hand in hand with my next question perfectly. We're living in a time when book bans are a reality, with books that touch on topics such as racism and Black history being targeted. What is your reaction to that as an author and a person, and does it influence any of your decision making as an author?
I've had 8 different books that have been banned, and to think that a book that seeks to convey racial equality, or a book that seeks to document when people in the past have conveyed that a particular racial group is inferior, to ban a book that says those ideas of racial hierarchy, or those policies that are excluding people are wrong, to ban that type of book really sort of shows where we are at. It shows more actually about the book banner than it actually does the book.
What are some of those things that you think are important to notice or keep in mind when trying to be actively anti-racist? Like, what are some things that you hear in your research or in your conversations with people that people tend to conflate or use as excuses of, oh, well, that's not racist, or that person's not racist, or I'm not racist?
But it is certainly the case that people think that their identity makes it such that they can't be racist, or they're not racist. And frankly, it doesn't really matter. None of that really matters. People from all walks of life, all political ideologies, people who uh, have different types of relationships with different racial groups can also be racist. There's so much more to being racist than putting up a white only sign or calling someone the N-word, because those are two of the most obvious signs for people. But there's also another obvious sign of racism in an institution or in a community, and that's racial disparities. And so when we see racial inequities, what we may not be seeing behind those racial inequities are racist policies and practices, but they're there. And that's the reason why those inequities exist, not because some racial group is inferior.
100%. Absolutely agree. And I'm curious to know whether you think that having books like the ones that you write, books that tell our history, uh, books that tell us where we've come from and kind of where we're going, if you think those can help us reshape our realities and help reduce those inequalities.
I do, because if, for instance, you believe that particular people are dangerous, and then you learn that those people are being incarcerated at high levels or even deported at high levels, you're going to think that's a good thing because those quote unquote people are so dangerous. So you're going to ultimately support racial injustice because you literally don't realize um, that no racial group is dangerous or more violent or more criminal-like than another racial group. And so that's why learning that we're actually equal, if actually learning all these ideas that teach us to attach particular behaviors to skin color and so we can unlearn those ideas is absolutely critical.
So you're saying to unlearn what society has taught us over the years, we must learn what a lot of these books that are currently being banned are teaching.
Exactly. They're banning them for a reason.